The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeremy Walsh, and I'm the Director of Support, Training, and Documentation for BNI Connect. I'd like to welcome everybody to the webinar today. Today's webinar is on the visitor process in BNI Connect. If anybody has ever struggled to invite visitors, or you invite visitors and they're not showing up to the meeting, that is what today's webinar is designed for. There's a number of places in BNI Connect that can assist you with the process of both inviting visitors, getting visitors to pre-register for a chapter meeting as opposed to just showing up, as well as following up with visitors after they've already attended the meeting. And that's what we're going to be going over in today's webinar. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping things. Today's webinar is a live presentation, so that means that if you have any questions as we're going through the material today, please do feel free to ask those questions. The best way to do that is through the questions panel in the GoToWebinar software. If you type your question in, I will see it pop up on my screen. I'll be able to answer that question as we're going through the material. Or if it's something unrelated, we are very happy to discuss that at the end of the webinar today. The webinar is scheduled for about 30 minutes worth of content. I do try to keep them to 30 minutes so that you can get back to your busy schedules and your busy lives. That being said, if you do have a lot of questions or you'd like to learn more, I am absolutely happy to stay on the webinar as long as you have questions. Today's webinar is also being recorded. So if you'd like to review this webinar at a later date, it will be available in a couple of different places. If you click on this question mark here in BNI Connect in the upper right-hand corner, that will take you to our support page. And on our support page, we have a ton of information. We have the upcoming webinars, we have the all of the documentation from the system, and we also have the recordings. So if you scroll down a little bit to the chapter training and documentation section, there's a section for recorded webinars. We organize them all by month there, so if you click on a particular month, let's say January 2014, you can review any of the webinars that happened in that month. You'll also find all of the webinars up on our YouTube channel. So if you go to youtube.com/BNI Connect Global, this will have all of our recorded content. So it includes not just the webinars, but also a number of other things as well. We have 3 to 5 minute educational videos on various topics throughout the system. We have special announcements here from Dr. Meisner. We have new features and updates and all sorts of things up here on our YouTube channel. So please do visit us, youtube.com/BNI Connect Global. But let's talk about visitors in BNI Connect. So if anybody's interested, I did write a 53-page manual on the visitor process in BNI Connect, and you can email me, support@bniconnect.com, support@bniconnect.com, and I would be happy to send you a copy of this. But basically, here's the overall flow of the visitor process. So before a chapter meeting, we invite visitors to a meeting. Normally, we do that just by going up to them at a networking event and saying, hey, you want to come to a BNI meeting? And sometimes that works and sometimes that doesn't. In BNI Connect, we do have a tool that allows you to send in a very professional looking and branded email to a potential visitor to invite them to come and visit your BNI chapter. And what's great about it is it includes all of the pertinent information that they need. Now, after you invite them, there's also a pre-registration process. So rather than just randomly showing up to a chapter meeting, you can have the visitors register for a specific meeting. So they can register to come to that meeting, and now this helps to build up the accountability for showing up to the meeting. Now, visitors can pre-register themselves by going to your chapter website or by going to your regional website, or you as a member can register your visitors on the inside of BNI Connect. So both of those are available. Now, after the meeting happens, you also want to make sure you're following up with your visitors. We help you with that. There's an automated email that goes out after the visitor has been marked as attended the meeting, or if they didn't pre-register, after you add that visitor into the system. But it also updates the POMS report, so the person that invited them, they get the credit for it. you can also run reports. Once you start building a visitor database for your chapter, you can run reports on that and get all the visitor information. You can export that information to put into things like send out cards, or you can send an email to those visitors and maybe invite them back to another meeting if they didn't apply the first time, or invite them back to something like a Visitors Day or a Stack Day, or even to some type of a regional event, a networking event that you might be having. So these are the different things that we're going to be covering today. So let's get started with inviting visitors. So as I said, BNI Connect has a way that you can invite a visitor to come and visit your chapter. This is going to be located in the chapter operations. Now, a lot of times I hear from people, well, I don't know where to find stuff in BNI Connect. I never know where to go in order to find these various tools and things. The way I always think about it is that you can see that there's a bunch of menu options here at the top. You have the network and the operations and the reports. Some people will also see the tools and the admin functions. Now, the way I view it is the home button will bring you back to this My BNI Business page. The network menu item has all of the different social media things. So really it's doing stuff with your network. You're going to go out and find new connections, or you're going to manage your connections, or you're going to work with testimonials, or you're going to go into the social media groups to have a discussion with Dr. Meisner. The operations is where you're going to input things. They're interactive tools in the system for managing your chapter, or creating emails, or inputting the speaker rotation, or inputting POMS reports. It's really the input section of BNI Connect. Reports are simply to pull the data back out. So there's no data input at all in any of the reports. It's just getting the information back out of BNI Connect. So to find this tool that we're going to use to send out an invitation, we're going to go to the Operations menu. So I'm going to go to Operations Chapter. When we get to Operations Chapter, you'll see a thing in here that says Create Email. So since we're going to be creating an invitation, we're going to click on Create Email. Now there's three different options in here. We have Email My Chapter, Email Visitor Invitation, and Email Chapter Visitors. So what we want to do is click on Email Visitor Invitation. This will create an invitation that we're going to send to a potential visitor. Now what you'll see here is a very simple form. All we need to do is fill out this form, and what it's going to do is going to take the information that we input here, and it's going to put it into an email. The email is already pre-written. It's a template that's designed by your regional office that'll have all the right information to send to this potential visitor. So we can put in the first name and the last name of the visitor that you're looking to invite. So let's say I'm looking to invite John Smith. I can put in the company name, Smith Co., and the visitor email address. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my own email address in here so that you can see what this visitor invitation looks like. Now if you'd like to try it, feel free to try this at home. You can go to Operations Chapter, create email, email visitor invitation, and send an invitation to yourself to see what they look like. The personal message is going to be your way to customize this email so that it's more personalized. It will appear as the first paragraph of the email that is sent out. So you may want to say something, like, it was great meeting you at the networking event, or something. It was great to meet you at the networking event. I would love to introduce you to my referral team. Now when I hit send, it's going to take this information, it's going to address it to John, it's going to send it to this email address, and it's going to include my personal message. I click send, and in just a couple of seconds, I should get that in my email. And here it is. So here's the message that was just sent. So you can see that I sent this. It has the subject line, invitation, my BNI chapter wants to meet you. It has this nice BNI graphic in here. And then it addresses it, Dear John. It was great to meet you at the networking event. I would love to introduce you to my referral team. So now this is my personal message that got inserted as that first paragraph. So the great thing about this is one of the things that we always struggle with when we're inviting visitors to a chapter is that it's really hard to think of what to say in that email. And it's great to meet them at the networking event. Hey, why don't you come to my BNI chapter? But they probably aren't at a place where they can write down the address and they can write down what time you meet and what day you meet and all that stuff. And then we get back to our office, and that's sure, it doesn't happen to you, but some of us get lazy and we don't want to look up all the information. And now you don't have to, and you don't have to think about what to say. Just have to put those couple of things in, and it will tell them where the meeting is. The name of my chapter is automatically inserted. It lets them know that we meet at the Elks Club. It lets them know that we meet at 60 Belmont Avenue in Wakefield, and what day and what time we meet. So if that information ever changes, let's say that your chapter moves to a different location, this will be updated automatically because it's pulling the information from BNI Connect. It then tells them a little bit about BNI, just a couple of sentences to tell them what BNI is all about. It lets them know they're looking for that particular profession, and it lets them know to let you know whether or not they're going to attend that chapter meeting. If they hit reply to this message, it will be sent to your email address. Now, one thing that I get asked all the time is, okay, well, we sent them out. How do we know that they were sent? And are there any reports to follow up on them or to maybe find out how many people are using it? And the answer to that is no. It's a very straightforward tool that simply sends out a message. We are not collecting the email addresses. We're not collecting any of the names or the company names or anything like that. And because of that, there are also no reports for that. So it is just a one-time tool to be able to send out a branded and very approachable invitation email to potential visitors. So the second part of the process, after you've invited your visitors, what we'd like them to do is to pre-register for a chapter meeting. Now, the pre-registration happens one of two ways. So as a chapter member, you can pre-register visitors for your chapter. Now, I don't want to register any visitors for my chapter, so I'm going to switch over to my test region here. I'm going to take a little trip to Antarctica, go up to my Shiver region and the Burr chapter. So let's say I'm a member of the Burr chapter and I've invited somebody to say, yeah, you know what, that sounds great. I really want to come to the meeting. Well, as a member, I can now register them for that chapter meeting. The benefits of doing this is that it does start an email process. So once you register a visitor for a meeting, they will get an email confirmation. So it says, thank you for registering for this upcoming meeting. We look forward to seeing you. Here's the address again. Here's the date and time that you're scheduled for. Please come with plenty of business cards. More than that, it also sends an email to your leadership team, so the president, the vice president, the secretary treasurer, and the visitor host now know that somebody is coming to the meeting. The director consultant is also informed. And then 2 days before your chapter meeting, the visitor will get another email saying, just a reminder, you registered to visit this meeting. Please come to the meeting. Now, what this is doing is it's really boosting the professionalism of showing up to a professional networking meeting. So it's not just a, yeah, maybe I'll show up, maybe I won't, but now somebody's expecting you to show up. So how do we register a visitor for an upcoming meeting? So if I go back to this operations chapter again, the very first option is managing visitors here. I can click on register a prospective visitor. And this will allow me to register a visitor for an upcoming meeting. I can choose what profession they're in. I can choose their specialty. I can choose what date they're visiting, so I can choose this upcoming week, or I can even choose a week further in the future. I type in their name. So this is John Smith from Smith Co. If I have their address details, I can enter that in. I can put in their country and zip code and phone numbers. And the email address is mandatory. And again, this is because it is starting an email campaign in order to communicate and have some touch points with this potential visitor. So I'm going to put my own email address in here so that you can see what that email looks like. Now, once I click submit, John Smith, my visitor, is now registered for the July 9th meeting of the BRRRR chapter. Now, visitors can also register themselves even though they don't have access to BNI Connect. So I did just get my registration message here, and it says, "Hi, John, you're confirmed to visit the BNI BRRRR chapter." And it lets them know that the meeting is on 7/9. It's at 5:30 p.m. It's for 90 minutes. Please bring plenty of business cards. That's on Wednesday at 5:30, and here is the location. So all of that information is there for them, and again, they'll get a reminder email 2 days before. But as I said, visitors can also register themselves for an upcoming chapter meeting as well. They do that through the regional websites. So you can direct them there, or people are just finding this on their own as well. So let's say that I'm a resident of Antarctica, and I go to the regional website for Antarctica, and I heard about BNI, and I want to go visit a chapter. So I go to the regional website, which is antarcticreferrals.com, and I want to go look for a chapter that I might want to go and visit. I say, all right, well, the BRRRR chapter. They meet on Wednesdays. It looks like a pretty cool chapter. I have that time available. I'm going to go ahead and look at that chapter. Take a look at the members here, and it looks like there's some pretty good people in that chapter. We got Marky Mark. We got Art Garfunkel. Alfred E. Newman's in that chapter. I never knew that. So I want to go ahead and visit this chapter. So if I click Visit this chapter, the same form shows up for the visitor, though, on the public website. So the person would just choose a visit date. They can type their name in, their company name, their phone number, their email address, and they can choose their industry and classifications. And Visitor here, he's in advertising, and he's an advertising agency. He also can type in the person that invited him, if he knows. We do make everybody type in a CAPTCHA code, and that's to make sure that we don't have any little robots out there that are registering hundreds of visitors to our chapters. And they click Submit. And now our friend Victor Visitor is now registered to visit the BRRRR chapter meeting on July 2nd. And in a second, and I just got it, "Hi, Victor, you are confirmed to visit the BNI BRRRR chapter." So there's a lot of great things you can do. Once you know that people are coming to visit your chapter, if you happen to be on the leadership team, or if you're a visitor host or a director consultant, there's lots of things you can do with this information now. Now, first of all, there is a report for this, seeing how many visitors are registered for your chapter meeting. So if I go to reports now, and I go to the chapter reports, there at the bottom there's a visitor registration report. So I can choose any time frame I want. By default, it's going to show me my next week's visitors. But I can go ahead and I can choose the whole month of July. I want to see who's coming in July. And here we can see all the visitors that are registered to visit the BRRRR chapter up there in Antarctica for the next month. I can see that we have a couple of visitors coming this week on June 25th. We have a couple of visitors coming on July 9th, and we have a visitor that's coming on July 2nd. With this information, we can now do a little bit of pre-follow-up. We can make the visitor feel welcome before they even come to the meeting. Maybe before next week's meeting on July 2nd, we want to give Victor a call and say, "Hey, it's great. I see that you're in advertising. I can't wait to introduce you to the graphic designer in our chapter. We've been looking for somebody in advertising for a long time. Is there anything I can tell you about the meeting?" What about maybe having name badges already prepared for Victor so that when he gets there, he doesn't have to go through the whole process of filling out his own name badge. There's one waiting for him on the desk, or maybe you have a whiteboard at your chapter meeting and you can say, "Welcome to our visitors, Victor. Welcome to the chapter." The more you can make the visitor feel welcome, the better the chance that they'll have a good relationship with the people in the chapter and possibly even submit an application. So now we're going to fast forward a little bit. We've gone through the pre-meeting steps. So we've invited the visitors. We've pre-registered the visitors. We've communicated with the visitors ahead of time. Now that we know their name, we know their email address, we know who's invited the visitor, we know how many people are coming to the meeting. Now the meeting happens and we have the follow-up. So we always want to make sure that we follow up with the people after the chapter meeting to ask them, how did you like the meeting? How did it go? Would you like to come back next week? And we can do that through BNI Connect as well. So after the meeting, the first step is that if you are a visitor host or if you are the secretary treasurer, the person responsible for entering visitors, what you want to make sure to do is that you need to build your visitor database. And building your visitor database is great because you can always do the follow-up, not just for the week after, but even going into the future. As we know, not everybody that visits a BNI chapter ends up joining, but maybe they come back. Maybe they will come back to purchase things in the future. Maybe they'll come back as a visitor and possibly the timing will be right for them to become a member. But we can only follow up with those people if we capture their information and put them into a chapter visitor database. So once we've registered the visitors, you can mark them as having attended the meeting. And again, you'll only see this option if you are a visitor host or if you are a secretary treasurer that has access. But to do that, we would go to Manage Registered Visitors. And from here, what we can do is to look for any visitors that are in the system. We can choose a date or a name if we'd like to, but we can see all of the visitors. Now, we had a couple of visitors that were registered for the meeting this morning that we had. So Joe Bottaminio was registered for the meeting this morning, and he came to the meeting in Antarctica. So what we want to do is we're going to go in, and we want to mark him as having attended the meeting. So you'll see there's an option here, did the visitor attend? I can check that off, and now we will be put it into our visitors database. I can see that he said he was invited by Al Newman, so I'm going to mark off that Al Newman was the person that invited him. And I can choose whether or not to send a follow-up email, a thank you for visiting our chapter email. Once I click submit, oh, I forgot to select their specialty here. Once I click submit, that thank you for visiting email will be sent. And Mr. Joe Bottaminio will be added to our visitor database. So you'll notice he's no longer here in our registered visitors, our pre-meeting visitors. He's now going to be in our visitor database. Now, if you have people that did not pre-register for a meeting, you may want to just add their visitor records in anyway. So you take the sign-in sheet back with you, and you could click on Add Visitor. In order to just input their details, it would still send them a confirmation message. The credit would go in the PALMS report, and it would still send them the visitor follow-up email. Now, once we've started establishing a visitor database, we can now use this information to grow our chapters in the future. So there's a couple of ways that you can do this. If I go back to the Operations menu and go to Operations Chapter, if you would just like to send out an email to your visitors that have come either in the last week or in the last month, or maybe let's say you're doing a new Visitors Day and you'd like to invite back all of the visitors that have ever come to your chapter this year, you can do that by going to Create Email and click on Email Chapter Visitors. This will give you the ability to choose some selections. So you can choose just visitors that have come in the last week. Let's say that I wanted to get all the visitors that have come so far since January 1st this year. And I'd like to invite them to this great networking event that we're going to be having, and after hours maybe for our chapter. I can click Next, and this will give me a list of all of the email addresses for the visitors for that time period. If I'd like to, I can also go through and maybe do some further selections. If you're having what's called a stack day or a focused inviting day, you may want to just invite all of the accountants for that accounting stack day that you had. So whatever you'd like to do, you can get those email addresses very quickly by clicking on Email Chapter Visitors. But there's also a report that you can use to follow up with visitors as well. So if I go to the chapter reports, there's a chapter report called the Chapter Visitor Report. And if I click on the Chapter Visitor Report, I can choose a date range. So again, let me go back and choose all of the visitors from January 1st through today. If I know the person's name and I'm just looking for a specific person's information, I can click on I can type in a first name or a last name, or again, I can choose a certain profession if I'd like to. And I click Go. And this will give me a report of all the visitors for the chapter in that time period. So again, I can send them an email, I can copy their email address, I can just look at the data, see when we had visitors that came in. Now, if you're using something, again, like a send out cards, and you'd like to add them to a thank you card mailing list, one of the things you can do is you'll notice that this report, now all the reports in BNI Connect can be printed and exported, but on this report, you'll see there's a note here that says there's further information available when exporting. So if I export this report, and by the way, notice there's two exports. Export without headers means it's not going to include all of this information at the top of the report, which tends to cause things like blocks of information and merged fields and things like that. Export would include all of that. So I almost always choose export without headers whenever that's an option. I can now open this up in Excel. And here's my Excel form. And the one thing about this report when it's exported is that if you notice on the screen, it includes their name, company, profession, email, and visit date. The exported report also has their address information. So if you need to, again, add them to some type of a mailing list, you'd be able to do that by exporting the report and then using this as a mailing list. All right, so just to recap, here's the stuff that we covered today. The flow of visitors in BNI Connect. So before the meeting, we have the way to email a visitor invitation. It's a professional, branded, well-worded email that takes all the guesswork out of inviting visitors. You can do that through the visitor invitation email. You can also pre-register visitors for a chapter meeting. That allows them to get the notifications, the registration notices, the chapter gets notified, the leadership team of the chapter gets notified, director consultant gets notified, so you know how many visitors are coming to your weekly meeting. And then finally, we have ways that we can follow up with visitors. You have the visitor reports as well as the way to send them emails. So we are getting close to the bottom of the hour. What I'd like to do is to open this up for questions. If anybody has any questions, I would love to answer those questions at this point. While you're thinking up any questions, just a reminder, this is being recorded, including any questions that we have. It will be made available on the support site. Again, that's support.bniconnect.com. You can get there by clicking on the question mark here in the upper right-hand corner. That will take you over to the support site, and you'll be able to find those in the recorded webinars section under chapter training and documentation. You'll also find it on our YouTube channel, which is, again, youtube.com/BNI Connect Global. All of our recordings are up here on BNI Connect Global. I would also love it if you gave us a like on Facebook. So if you go to facebook.com/BNI Connect Global, you'll find webinar reminders and announcements and tips and tricks and all sorts of things up on our Facebook channel as well. And finally, a good referral from me. If you found some good information in today's webinar, we do hold a number of monthly webinars. Our very next webinar is going to be on maintaining your chapter website. So if you're a chapter webmaster, or if you'd like to customize your chapter website, we're going to be going through some of those functionalities tomorrow, June 26th at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. You can find that on your regional event calendar. Of course, you can go to the support site and register through the link there. Next month, we have a full slate of webinars as well, so please Again, a good referral for me. Please recommend these webinars to your chapters. Let them know that this information is available. All right, we do have a question. Nathan says, hello, which admin position enters in the visitor sign-in sheets from the meetings into BNI Connect? So Nathan, I'm going to preface this by saying, please speak with your chapter director consultant or your executive director. Certain things and processes in BNI Connect vary from region to region. So in many regions, it's the visitor host. So if you're a visitor host, you would be entering in the visitors after the meeting. So again, taking that visitor sign-in sheet back and entering those visitors into BNI Connect. In other regions, it's the secretary-treasurer. In other regions, the vice president does it. In some regions, the president does it. So really, it slightly varies region by region who exactly is responsible. So I would definitely say, please talk to your director consultant or your executive director who can give you the exact answer for that. So, and Steve says that, the paragraph might be updated in the visitor invitation email to let the visitor know to register at the chapter website. And that's something that we're looking at for a future release, to actually include the link to the web page for your particular chapter. We're hoping to have that in a future version. But it also wouldn't be a bad idea. What I've seen some people do is to actually include the link in the opening paragraph. So they could put that right into the words that they use in their personal message. So, but we do have that one on the suggestions list, Steve. Thank you very much. All right. Do we have any additional questions? All right, if there's no additional questions, again, I remind you, facebook.com/BNI Connect Global, youtube.com/BNI Connect Global. Good referral. Please let other members know about these webinars, and I look forward to seeing you all on a future webinar. Thank you so much for being here, everyone, and have a wonderful afternoon. Happy connecting.